Well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining the webinar today. We are going to focus today from Assured Strategy on how to unlock your employee potential and your team and company potential by understanding more about the psychology of how to drive accountability in your team and setting goals that can be achieved. So the first thing I like to do when we start off here is begin to tell a story. This is going to give you an overarching framework regarding the psychology of things. So some of you might have heard this story. Basically, once upon a time, there were 3 bricklayers. The first bricklayer said, when the person walked by and asked them, "What are you doing?" that person said, "I'm laying bricks." Then that person went to the second individual, and that person said, "I'm building a wall." When the individual got to the third person and asked, "What are you doing?" that person said, "I am building a cathedral." So depending upon the mindset of the why, like why is someone doing the work in an organization that they're doing, you're going to be able to drive intentional emotional purpose into the organization when they understand that they're not just doing simple tasks. They're actually a part of something. They're involved in something emotional, and it's bringing some passion into what they're trying to do within their role and the value of what they're bringing to the overarching organization in their role and the different goals that they're achieving. So the first thing that is really, obvious about this story is that helping people get clarity of purpose is going to be vital for that emotional engagement. All right, so my name is Keyne Petkovic, and I am passionate personally about combining my background in psychology. I have a master's in counseling with my 25 years of executive management experience. And what I have found in my career is that combining the psychology of people with the business aspect has been a very powerful combination, because most of us as leaders, we are getting our results through people, through our teams. So the more that we can integrate understanding the psychology of employees, I believe the better results we can get for a company. So at Assured Strategy, we are a growth firm. We have a lot of different services, and it's grounded in scaling up and mastering the Rockefeller habits. But we bring a lot of extra people tools, not a part of this foundational growth model, into our work, because with my background and the passion that we have with our coaches, the key to getting results is driving people. So scaling up, if you're familiar with it, it's a growth model, and it covers 4 different areas: people, strategy, execution, and cash. And so when you're looking at these 4 different decisions that have to happen in an organization, we're trying in this particular webinar to combine some of the people and the execution, along with the foundation of the why, which is going to be a touch into the strategy. So we are going to be covering 5 different things that drive the psychology of results. Number 1, we're going to talk about creating purpose. Number 2, creating clarity. 3 is creating focus. 4 is creating accountability. And 5 is going to be creating employee engagement, the engagement. Now, we are going to be using 10 primary tools as I go through this presentation. And those 10 tools are available to you. It's free of charge. Just email me if you are interested in any one of these particular tools, or if you're interested in all of them. So when you see this little tool symbol over here, that's going to be an indication that that slide has a corresponding tool. And at the end of each section of those 5 areas of our agenda, I'll mention the tool's name in case you want to write that down and reach out for that particular tool. Or you could wait for the end and just ask for all of them. That's fine too. Okay, number 1, creating purpose. When we begin to think about a company driving purpose in an organization, we use what's called the one-page strategic plan. And that has 3 different categories that create purpose within an organization. This first here in gray is the core. All right, and we're going to talk about that today. Core purpose, BHAG, core values. This blue section is strategic thinking. This is more your 3-year and your 10-year, right? This is your longer term strategic thinking as it relates to your organization. Brand promise goes in here and a variety of other things. Then you have this yellow section, which is execution. This execution section is where we're aligning goals within an organization regarding what are the key thrusts that a company needs to have a capability of within their organization that's going to drive their ability to get to their 10-year goal. We'll talk about the 10-year goal in a minute. That's called the BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goal. And if we need to get here in 3 years, then what are the 1-year steps along that journey that's going to get us closer to our 3-year thrusts, our key capabilities that we need to have in-house to continue to grow? And then that 1 year is broken down into the quarter. All right. So, and then the quarter is going to get rolled out to line staff or leaders within the organization as relevant to their role. So there's really 3 different categories of what is put on this 1-page strategic plan. And we're not going into a lot of depth of this today, but I want to ground this into purpose. This is where we have the big picture understanding of what this company is trying to do. So the first thing you have to understand that employees need to know what is the core purpose of the company. Right? What difference is your organization making in the world? And that is an emotional attachment to why they show up every day and they're a part of this journey and a part of working day to day. We spend so much time in organizations that we are employed at that the employee cannot just clock in and clock out. If they're tied to your company purpose, then they feel that they're bringing value into that overarching vision of what you're trying to create. So that employee understands that they are creating a cathedral. They're not just clocking in and building, brick by brick by brick. So one of our clients was Wilson Creek. They're a winery out in Temecula, California. And this is an example of purpose. Their purpose is to enhance lives. Now, they created this purpose because they just didn't want to make wine. There's lots of wineries out in California. They wanted the winery to be a place where anyone could come and feel welcome and comfortable, and it was not, pretentious at all. You didn't need to be a wine expert. They have an area of their property where there's a gym, like a jungle gym for the kids to play, and picnic areas, right? And a little creek that's more of like family area. They have other areas that are going to be more, kind of high scale in terms of wine tasting and reserved rooms and things like that. But in the spectrum of their organization, they wanted to be able to allow the community to come to their winery and or drink their wines in their own homes and enhance the lives, not because it's the wine specifically, but it's because wine often relates to bringing community together, family together, friends together. It's a social exchange that often happens with wine. It's an appreciation of something that's happening in their life. It's an emotional connection to other people. So their purpose is to enhance lives, right? Their purpose isn't to make barrels of wine. That's the emotional connection that employees have as to why the company exists. All right. Now, BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goal. This is the other thing that employees need to understand is what is the far off mountain peak that we are marching towards? Okay. And the BHAG is comprised of what are you deeply passionate about as an organization? What drives your economic engine? We need to be profitable. We need to be able to stay in business. So like, what is the product? Like what's driving your economic engine in your company? And what can you be the best at in the world? The combination of these 3 things is what creates then the Big Hairy Audacious Goal. And so sticking with Wilson Creek, their Big Hairy Audacious Goal is to sell 1 million cases by 2026. And they're going to exceed that goal for a variety of reasons of things that happened to 10x them up. But that's their Big Hairy Audacious Goal. So when the employees are working on the different initiatives of the organization, they know that those initiatives are being added up towards the barrels, those cases that are being sold. Now, core values. Core values is your other aspect that's going to create purpose as to why the employee is there. The core values are not words on a wall. They're not on the back of a badge or just nicely put into an employee handbook. Core values are the rules that allow employees to understand this is the character of the individual that we want on the journey with us. And if you don't have these character traits, then we're not the right fit or the right culture for you in our organization. And we have to be militant about driving our culture and giving employees feedback on core values. So core values create your cultural baseline expectations of how we show up as an employee in your world. Okay, it adds to that sense of purpose. So there's 3 things that test if your core values are actually a part of your organization or if they're just words on a wall and given platitude. Number 1, do you hire by them and do you let people go by them? Are you interviewing through core value questions? Are you giving feedback through core value violations? You know, is core values a part of how you evaluate if someone is an A, B, or C player in your organization and you're actively coaching them up in the core value behaviors that you want to have within your company? The second is, are you willing to take a financial hit to do right by your core values? Okay. So example here, Wilson Creek, during COVID, they shut down, obviously, as many of us, you know, did in business. And then they were just about to reopen. And the first day of reopening, one of their employees tested positive for COVID. And the executive team got together and had a meeting and said, are we going to enhance lives and live our purpose if we keep our doors open versus shut our doors again, close back down again, and get all the employees tested, bringing in nurses, get all the employees tested, and reopen up when we know that we are a safe environment? And they made the financial decision to shut down their winery, which they had been shut down for a while. You know, COVID was a heavy hitter for many of us financially. And that story got out and actually went into a national news, right? I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a story then that was told, and that expedited their visibility across the country in ways they could never have imagined with their normal marketing. And so that was something that improved their overarching sales way, way more than if they had kept their doors open and tried to deal with that COVID outbreak behind the scenes. And so if we're willing to take a financial hit, then that lets us know that those core values, that purpose is alive in our organization. And that's the third one. Do people know it? Do they know your core values? Can they speak about your purpose? Are they telling stories around them? Are they giving feedback around them? Or is it just something that the executive team might know, maybe haven't memorized, and it's really not a part of that actual culture that is visibly felt and emotionally experienced when someone comes into the company or a customer is visiting that organization? Okay, so alive among the people means that they are real. Now, the core values of Wilson Creek are to be warm and engaging, have the courage to be different, passionately care, value the person in front of you, and be down to earth. Okay, an example of this is that when we go on their campus, we were having our own internal company event there a couple years back, a shared strategy event. And so we decided, because they had, were our client, to test the person who was our, server and helping us with our wine tasting, if they could speak to the core values, because they had mentioned when they introduced themselves that they were a brand new employee. So we were expecting that employee to not know them yet. And that employee literally stood there in front of all of us and went down the list and had memorized all of them. And she had been there just a very short amount of time. So that's an example where the expectation that this is something the employees are engaged in, understand, memorize, use, and it's used in your leadership and feedback conversations is a critical aspect of being able to drive and create that purpose in terms of how we're going to get goals met. Employees want to feel connected to something, okay? So that big, hairy, audacious goal is out here, this far off mountain peak. That's our 10-year goal. We've got our 3-year target, And then we have our 1 year, and the 1 year is broken down into the 90 days. Because if we don't allow our employees to understand the purpose and where we're going and why we're doing it, then they're going to run all over this valley, making the best decisions that they can in the moment, but not having the understanding of where we're going and why we're going there. Because they are coming into our organization to be a part of a journey. They're accepting to be part of a journey. Now, if they know their purpose, the core values, the BHAG, then if they get to those little decisions all day long, where they have to make a decision, do I go right or do I go left? They'll have a better understanding of whether they should be heading right or left because they have a general idea of where the company is going, instead of a 50-50 guess that they're making the right decision in the moment. Because as leaders, we cannot micromanage and make every employee decision ourselves. We have to be able to delegate, empower, and allow them to have aspects of authority in their given area. And so what you're trying to do is point them in the right direction so they know, hey, is our company going north or south, east or west? And that'll allow them a better chance of making the decision that you want them to make through the lens of purpose, understanding purpose. All right, so the tool that we covered in this first section was the one-page strategic plan. So if you would like to have that tool, then that's the name of it, OPSP, one-page strategic plan. All right, step number 2, we want to create clarity. Now, if our employees understand the purpose and they've understood the one-page strategic plan, that document is way too complex and not appropriate for employees deeper in the organization. That document is really for very senior leaders to work from. The document that employees get is going to be called the vision summary. And the vision summary is going to have the same core, right? They're going to have that core values, core purpose, and BHAG. They're also going to have brand promise, but I didn't talk about brand promise today. But these are the things that are going to allow them to understand the overarching purpose of the organization and where they're going. And then they're also going to have, straight from your one-page strategic plan, the company's 1-year goals, quarterly goals, and then the department goals. Now, not every 1-year and quarterly goal at the executive level is appropriate for every employee to know. So these are going to get tweaked and changed based upon what level of information is the right level for that individual. So you could end up making it where this ends up being a quarterly goal, and then the department goal, and then their specific team goal. You can adjust this any way you want. But the idea here is to create clarity on the big picture of the organization and the goals that the organization have that are relevant for their understanding. And then the bottom section of this is where they get clarity on their key performance indicators and what are their specific quarterly goals and priorities that they're working on in their area. Okay, because KPIs relate to the key performance indicators for the function of the job they serve. The quarterly goals are the initiatives and things that we need them to be a part of and to help work on in order to move the needle in different areas. And then the middle section is critical number. And I won't go into detail around this, but it's coming from the one-page strategic plan again. Like, what is the one thing that the company needs to focus on each quarter to move the needle that is going to engage the majority of staff and help to make that happen? So in any event, the vision summary is a document, and it's a tool that you can also use as a waterfall effect from the one-page strategic plan. Okay, it's the next level down. Then going one level deeper to create clarity is the job scorecard. So the job scorecard is where you're actually creating a lot of visibility for that employee regarding what the key performance indicators are of their job. So that ties to the vision summary. And then it also focuses on what is the majority of the functional focus for their role. It's not a job description. Okay, job descriptions are a different thing. It's telling them, what are your major challenges that you have to overcome? What are the typical obstacles that you are going to face? And then what are the key responsibilities and the requirements that you're going to need in order to fulfill and overcome those different obstacles and challenges to your role? So it's like it's focusing them on where their mind needs to be in order to do a good job in the function that they're being hired to do. And so those key performance indicators, measurable accountabilities here, and then the metric around that, the scoring, if they're doing it or not, and any comments. These job scorecards are created to, again, help create clarity before we move then into focus. So these two tools are your clarity tools, vision summary and job scorecard. All right, now we're going to go into step number 3. This is where we are creating focus. So focus is when we're trying to have them understand that in their normal day-to-day job, that is a whirlwind of activity. It has an energy of its own. But what we're trying to do is actually accomplish initiatives or goals on top of the whirlwind and push through that whirlwind, because they have to be able to accomplish additional initiatives, but at the same time, keep the day-to-day going. And that day-to-day has urgency, it has power, it has intensity. And urgent activities in their job is always going to trump the important activities that are needed but less urgent. Okay, so urgency is the crises of the day, or the things that are more emergencies or things that they need to deal with. So the quadrant 1 is the quadrant of necessity. So these are urgent and important, and that is going to take their time. What we're trying to have them do in terms of focus here is let them figure out what are the trends of crises or issues that keep popping up over and over again. And if they keep popping up in the day-to-day whirlwind, then something systemic needs to be addressed. So what is that pattern, and how can we go in and systemically change something so that we minimize how much of these urgent issues keep happening? Quadrant 3 is the quadrant of distraction. What we're trying to do here with our employees is help them understand, where is your time being hijacked? How are you being pulled into other people's things that they think are urgent but they're not important to you? It's sort of like they put their monkey on your back, right? And so oftentimes we are distracted by activities around us, emails or requests to be at a meeting that we maybe don't really need to be at, or people walking into our office because we haven't put up a sign on the door that says, working on a project, text me if there's an emergency, I'll be available after 4. So it's like when we don't have boundaries around our time management, then this is where we often will give up time and focus because of distractions. Sometimes with distractions, people don't want to say no because they want to be nice, or they don't want to, offend somebody, or they want to be helpful in the organization. And so sometimes in coaching in this area, we are actually trying to give people permission to set up boundaries and expectations for how they're going to manage their time with their employees. And then in terms of necessity, oftentimes here, we're trying to have them ask those more strategic questions that are analyzing trends. So waste, quadrant 4 is waste. Sometimes these are things that are hijacking our time because it's not actually giving us anything back for the time that we're spending on it. So this is called the quadrant of waste. We're putting energy and activities there and we're not getting things out of it. Examples of that might be when we end up, getting onto social media and 2 hours later, we realize that we've wasted time and then we feel guilty about it. So if you're feeling guilty afterwards, that's an indication that that was probably an area of waste. But if that activity is filling your well and rejuvenating you and doing something positive for you, then the same activity that could be waste for one person might not be waste for you. So we don't judge the activity. We ask ourselves, do we feel better and have gained something back from the time that we spent, or do we feel guilty because of the time that something took? Quadrant 2 is where we're trying to have people get focused in an organization. This is the area of effectiveness, long-term planning, long-term recreation, long-term rejuvenation, sitting down and thinking ahead, strategic planning. So quadrant 2 is where we're trying to get employees to be able to carve out the space to actually be able to spend time in this area. Because if they don't have focus in quadrant 2, then they're going to get their energy and time hijacked through the quadrants 1, 3, and 4. Because those quadrants have a whirlwind, an energy, a mind of their own. All right. So this is a tool. It's called Time Matrix, if you're interested. All right. So when we are focusing on quadrant 2, we're trying to have people create goals that are meeting SMART criteria. And many of you are probably familiar with SMART criteria, but for those of you that are not, I'm just going to do a quick rundown of this. S stands for specific. What exactly is going to be accomplished? What exactly are you going to do? Okay, if you don't know and it's just a nebulous statement, then it's very hard to do number 2, which is measure it. You have to be able to measure the goal, okay? And you have to be able to track the progress over time. Attainable, is the goal even doable? And do you have the necessary skills and resources in your organization to actually accomplish the goal? Because if it's not attainable, then it's going to actually cause your employees to be demotivated because they want to be winners. They want goals to be reached. They want to be successful. And if their goals are consistently being failed and they're not getting them done, or they're in the red about something all the time, then you have to ask yourself, is this attainable? Is it too much of a stretch goal? Because stretch goals are great and wonderful, but you do them after you have built up the momentum of their ability as a team to accomplish the smaller goals, because then they have momentum of being a winner, momentum of success. And then the stretch goals actually are becoming more attainable. They're more doable. But if you start your teams on stretch goals too early and they are not being able to meet them, you will actually demotivate them in having the psychology of working towards the additional initiatives and important quarterly goals that you're trying to set. So this one is a really important piece. R is relevance. Is the goal relevant to my company and our quarterly rocks or our annual, initiatives? Are we actually making goals that are relevant to the big picture? Because there are a million wonderful things that we could do in our departments. But if it's not relevant to where the company is marching towards, right, that far off distant peak in the mountains far off, or in that 3-year, or the path towards the 1 year, if it's not relevant to the journey that our company is on, then we have to say no to really great ideas. Because your stop doing list is just as important as your to-do list. And it's very, very hard for leaders sometimes to actually say no to things because they get excited about those wonderful ideas and they think that, yeah, we could do it. That would be fun. If we wanted to get it done, we actually could achieve it. But the question is it relevant, or is it going to sidetrack us from what we really need to be focused on? Timely. It has to be time bound. That's what's coming next, is this 13-week race. It has to be time bound. If you don't have a time bound to your goal, then you're not going to have any sense of urgency. So we recommend the 13-week race, which is basically 13 weeks in a quarter, because if your goal is too far out, people don't have, any thoughts of, well, I really need to work on it. I don't need to because it's 2 quarters from now. It's too far out. Chunk it down into bite-sized pieces, and that'll create that urgency. Because human beings, in order to override that whirlwind of activity in an organization in the day-to-day, you have to create that psychological aspect of urgency. And so having a clean start and a clean stop to your goal is going to be critical. So if your goals meet SMART criteria, right? Current state is X, to desired state, that's Y, by when is your end date. If your, X to Y by when meets SMART criteria, then you're on the right track to engaging from the psychological perspective here. Now, 13-week race. The other aspect of psychology that's really important when you're tracking your 13 weeks is to use color. Many times we go into organizations and they have dashboards, but those dashboards are numbers. And you have to understand the number and give mental thought to the number to figure out if it's on track or not. What we want with employees is to have them be able to quickly look at this goal spreadsheet, this goal tracking, and see clearly, am I in the green, in the yellow, or in the red? Because if you have a weekly attainable aspect of it and you're tracking the weekly results towards the overarching, end goal, then you're able to really get them to understand visually, are we on track or off? And that will create a sense of urgency because people don't want to fail. Most employees come into the office and they want to do good work. So color is a really powerful psychological tool that we can use. The other thing around accountability grids or dashboards that is super important to understand is that if you're a leader, you can have, many, many metrics that you are tracking for your department. But if you are trying to drive a race or a goal into a quarter that is on top of the whirlwind, you're doing it for the employee. They are the player, right? They are the player. You're the coach in this analogy. When a player is playing a game out on the court, the scoreboard that they see is the big one above them or the one on the wall that basically says, what's the score? How much time left do I have? Am I winning or losing? Okay, it's giving them, what quarter am I in? It's giving them the basic information that they need to know in order to play the game. They're not looking at the coach dashboard, which might have how many minutes did they hold the ball? How many turnovers did they have? How many attempts at a three-pointer or whatever in terms of your sports analogy? Your coach's dashboard is going to have a lot of metrics. But if you're trying to do something above and beyond the daily activities in an organization, then you really need to be able to create a dashboard that is fun, colorful, playful, engaging for the player, which is your employee. That's going to create some emotional attachment here. An example of this for a client that we're working with is they were trying to track something and their dashboard was a naked chicken drawn on a piece of, board that they stuck on the wall, the 99-cent kind you get at the dollar store. They just drew the outline of a chicken. They bought colorful feathers from the dollar store. And for every time that they made a specific thing that they were tracking, the store could put a feather on the chicken. And the goal was to, get those feathers on the chicken. So the chicken wasn't a naked chicken. So it was called the naked chicken race. I mean, things that are silly and fun and engaging are playful, and employees like games. So the more that you can gamify your goal, you're going to tap into the psychology of the fact that we like to play games. We like to have fun games, and they need to be things that we would have done, when we were younger, and it brings out that inner child in us. Employees are not motivated by numbers and data on a dashboard. It needs to have a gamification and color to it. All right, now, those two tools, three tools: time matrix, SMART goals, and then the 13-week race. There's more details in the tool, of course, but those are the three tools that we covered in that section of creating focus. Okay, next one, meetings. Now, creating accountability. In order to create accountability, step 4, we have to have a cadence of accountability check-ins. And if you don't have a way of doing that and a structure to your meetings and a purpose behind the meeting, then your meetings become ineffective. People don't like going. They end up sometimes dragging on past the scheduled time, and they just end up not getting the results that we want to get. So if you're going to create a culture of accountability within your organization, you have to tap into the psychology of the fact that people want to have a result and they want to know why they're doing something. So if you are doing a daily huddle, this is a very quick synchronization of the team. Okay, it's very tight. Good news. What is the one thing that you said you were going to do yesterday? Did you do it or not? What's the one thing that you are committing to do today? Where are we at on any data? And are you stuck in anything that you need support in order to keep things moving along? Okay, it's very, very tight. It's about a minute per person, quick round robin. That's just a quick synchronization. And the leader is listening to that to hear trends so that they can bring trends into then their weekly meeting. The weekly meeting is looking at focus and collaboration in the areas that can be discussed within the context of a quick half an hour, 45 or an hour meeting, right? So it's longer than the daily huddle, but it is focused and there's an agenda for that as well. And you're going over data again. So you're using your gamification of your extra initiatives, and you're bringing that data into these meetings to give that data attention and accountability. And then people have to be accountable publicly to the activities that they commit they're going to do. That's going to move us towards reaching that goal. So there's a variety of different ways in which we can do that. And we have very specific agendas on these. Then the monthly meeting is longer, 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours. The monthly meeting is when you're going to solve deeper problems, because you may need to invite other people into that meeting from different aspects of your company to do a deep dive on something that is too big of a topic to bring into a weekly meeting. And sometimes in our weekly meetings, if they're not run effectively, what ends up happening is the same topic keeps coming up over and over and over again. And employees and leaders get frustrated because it doesn't seem to ever get solved. But that's because the deep dive into that dynamic was not done in the appropriate setting, which is a longer monthly meeting with the right data and the right people in the room to have deeper conversations. And then also learning, sharing knowledge or sharing experiences such as, this, like you share what you've learned to help the team learn from each other. So monthly meetings, again, very specific agenda. There's much more in that we're not going to cover. Then quarterly. So some departments are large enough where they actually have their own quarterly meetings to set the next quarterly goals and talk about the critical number, or what is the 13-week race, and goal that we're going to be tracking. What are we focusing on? Okay. And some departments are smaller. They may not have a quarterly, or maybe they have just, a 2-hour monthly. And so the quarterly is another 2 hours, but whatever you need to have the quarterly focus get going again, you're going to create that cadence of accountability and keep that accountability moving forward within the organization towards your goals. Some departments have the need for an annual. The annual is to strategize and create the plan for the year and re-look at some of those things on the one-page strategic plan or on the vision summary, depending upon the level down that you are, and get everyone together. And maybe that's an offsite, maybe that's an all day, sometimes half day. But again, you're creating that cadence of accountability. There's a waterfall effect of bringing up these different things as it relates to these different meetings. And if we don't do this meeting cadence, we end up hijacking other meetings and not actually getting the result that we needed from the meeting. And it all gets jumbled and we lose the ability to have effective meetings. So each of these has a very specific agenda. And as an executive team, hopefully everyone is having some cadence that's like this. We definitely teach that in the growth system that we come in and support executive teams to do. But some companies are smaller or teams are smaller and they need to be tweaked. But you should be asking yourself, do we have the ability to synchronize? Do we have the ability to stay focused and collaborate? Are we having a time to learn and solve deep problems? Are we resetting priorities and critical numbers for the quarterly 13-week races? And do we have time to sit back and think big picture and strategize and plan for the upcoming year? All right, in the meeting cadence, the way that we hold people accountable is through a tool called the who, what, when. So the who, what, when is focusing on who is going to do what by when. And you cannot have more than one name in the who column. If you have more than one name, then there's nobody that's actually going to be accountable to that goal. So you can only have one name in the who. And these are done in the meeting cadence that I just described. This is an accountability tool that's brought into that meeting agenda. Then the who is going to state what they're going to do. Because oftentimes when we're having a conversation and someone says, oh, I'll do that, good intentions, but it's not documented, they forget, no one asked them if they ever did it, and it drops by the wayside. So if someone says that we need to do that or I'm going to do that, then the who writes the what. And the group then has the ability to re-ask questions to clarify what was written so that everyone is in agreement that the final what statement is actually what's needed. Because we all sometimes hear the same conversation differently and we have a different takeaway. So the what statement allows for everyone to agree that that is accurately what is agreed upon to do. The who is driving that. We all agree, and that's the statement then that we are documenting. And then when is it going to be done by? Sometimes things have urgency and they need to come to the top of someone's to-do list. Sometimes things don't have urgency and they can be done 2 weeks, a month, 2 months from now. And so this allows employees in a meeting to be able to understand the prioritization conversation they might have to have with their supervisor later, to look at their overarching to-do list and make sure that they are focusing on what's urgent or needs priority. Because sometimes what was urgent to a leader a week ago is no longer all that important, right? Business changes, but the employee thinks that's still urgent and they're still trying to get, quote unquote, their whole list done. But that list needs to have things come up and things come down and things taken off. And so those conversations can be had in your one-to-one coaching with your employees. There's a lot more detail in terms of the implementation of the who that we're not going to have time to go into right now, but this is a very powerful accountability tool when used in an organization. Now, there are 3 words that are often jumbled or misspoken or interpreted differently, or people have different definitions. Sometimes they use them interchangeably. And if you can help define these 3 words, then you will have a lot more clarity in your accountability in your meeting. So I want to talk about this real quick. Accountability is your ability to count, literally count. Did something happen? Yes or no? Are we at 20% or 30%? Are we red, yellow, green? It doesn't mean that you have responsibility of the action associated with that particular thing. Sometimes you might have accountability to report data, but you also might have the responsibility of the activities that generate that, okay? Or vice versa, you may only have one of these 2. But responsibility means action, taking action. Then there's authority. Authority is the ability to make a decision. And when we are trying to create that accountability within the organization, people have to understand, where are the boundaries of my authority decision making? Can I make a decision up to $300 of spend or $1,000 of spend? Can I hire or not? Can I let people go or not? What is the scope of authority in their particular role? And when line staff have the authority defined for them, their ability to move freely and act freely in the context of their job is much higher. You'll get more action and movement because, again, they understand that big mountain view. So the authority and the decisions they're making, right, back to the fork in the road, is actually done in the context of understanding the company's larger picture and larger initiatives and where that company is going. So their decisions are likely more in alignment. than just the 50-50 guess. So some people in a given, goal setting execution of a 13-week race, they might have the accountability of reporting data, but no responsibility. They might be delegating a lot of that to different team members, and they may or may not have the authority to make decisions, or maybe they do. But when we can clarify these 3 words for our employees and our leaders, then it cleans up a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding when these words are used interchangeably. Because what we notice a lot at Assured Strategy when we go in to do leadership training, that's one of the things I do is leadership training programs. It's like the middle leaders don't feel empowered. The senior team is frustrated that the middle leaders aren't making decisions and are acting disempowered. The middle leaders want empowerment, but they don't feel they have the authority. And so when we can clean up a lot of these 3 words, who's accountable for giving voice? Who's responsible for taking action? Who has the authority to make decisions? We can get a lot more initiatives moved through that energy of the daily, whirlwind in order to accomplish these extra goals. And this is the psychological aspect of empowering staff through clarity. Okay, so this is how we build accountability in our organization. Now, those tools were meeting rhythms. There's a tool for everyone. There's also some other tools that can go with the meeting rhythms, the who, what, when tool, and then the accountability, responsibility, authority tool. So if any of those 3 tools were of interest to you, those are the names of those. Okay, now step number 5. Now we are looking at what creates engagement. Engagement is number 5. We want an employee group that actually cares about doing these extra initiatives or accomplishing goals or accomplishing these 13-week races, doing above and beyond to move the needle on top of their day-to-day workflow. And the way to get that engagement is by understanding what drives an employee's engagement in the organization. There's 9 factors from the Kauffman Institute. And so these factors are what we want a leader to be able to say, yes, my employee could say, I'm able to do this. Like they feel that you're doing this. So if they can answer, if your employee can answer a 4 or 5, that they agree with the statement, or they strongly agree, those activities are going to build engagement. So number 1, accountability. Employees want to know what equals a good day. What are they being held accountable to? People want to come into the office and feel that they're doing good work. So clarity is kindness here. So that accountability is back to the tools, vision summary, job scorecards, 13-week races, meeting rhythms, right? WWW. Those are the types of activities that help an employee understand and say, yes, I know the outcomes for which I am accountable. Now, number 2, my leader really knows me. Employees don't want to be just a number. They want to actually understand that they are a human, they have a relationship with their leader, that leader knows them. They're not just clocking in and clocking out. And so is the leader finding things out about their personal life? I mean, obviously there's boundaries there and there's the appropriateness of work or not, but we really want employees to feel like their leader knows them as an individual. Okay, they're not just a number. Does the employee feel that their talents and abilities are fully utilized? Sometimes our employees have hidden talents that are not a part of their current role, or they're, we know about those talents, but we haven't really sat down and talked to them about their growth plans and their ideas for the future, or ideas to be able to apply those talents in other areas. I'm coaching one employee now who's the director in marketing, and she loves her job. She has no desire to change that job, but she also has a talent in teaching. And so she's creating the in-house middle leader training program from the material that we're doing with that company, because she wants to own training and teaching the next generation of leaders in the company. So that's an example where the talent that she had, she needed an outlet, and so she created the opportunity for that outlet. It doesn't necessarily mean that employees change jobs, okay? But you have to have the conversation to even know what their talents are. Are your successes recognized by the leader and coworkers? Employees want to have the small wins done and acknowledged and spoken about. It's not just the big wins, right? The once a quarter employee of the month, or, you know, employee of the year. It's not the big stuff. It's in your meeting cadence. One of the agenda items in meeting cadence is good news, both personal and professional. And this is where people get to highlight the small wins that they have every day. You know, I got an email from an employee, from a customer, and they said they really were happy with the service and thanked me for going the extra mile. That's a win. But employees don't often feel that these little wins are worthy enough of being put on an official meeting agenda and talked about. But when you're doing those good news in a regular cadence, in huddles and weekly meetings, monthly, etc., then those little wins are recognized and they can say yes to that one. Okay, are they being coached to build on their strengths? Coaching is a major aspect of our one-to-one relationship with our employees, and you will build engagement if you are actually sitting down and having one-to-one conversations with your people. And if you're doing that, it's a lot easier for them to say yes to these other things on this page, because the natural outcome of coaching and regular meetings and check-ins with your people is that they can say yes to those. Okay, best leader. They're going to judge you based upon the other leaders they've had in their career. And they want to be a part of a team that has a great leader, and they want to have the feeling that you are a good leader. The next one is going to be seeing value. Are they bringing value to their role in the company? Again, goes back to the metaphor that we started with, which is, does the employee understand they're building a cathedral? Do they understand that that one brick that they're laying isn't about laying a brick? It's about building a cathedral. It gives that sense of purpose and value to their role. Okay, back to step one, which is creating that purpose. And then, are they a part of a strong team? Teams want to win. Employees do not want to be on teams that constantly don't meet goals. That ties back to your SMART goals. Is it attainable? Are you allowing your team to have those wins and building momentum? Do they see themselves as a strong winning team? And then, are they growing professionally? Are you actually sitting down and finding out what is of interest to them in their next steps? Okay, and our next steps and our idea of growth is not necessarily what other employees have as their idea. Some people are perfectly happy in their role. Growth does not equal a promotion. Growth might equal an opportunity to share their passion about a skill that they know really well within the company. Okay, so we have to be careful that we don't project our biases onto our employees. So if you want to drive engagement and the energy and the initiative to want to tackle additional goals on top of the whirlwind, you need to be focusing on employee engagement. All right, so the tool for that section was the 9 staff engagement factors. And if you're interested in that, we're happy to send it. So that was a lot in an hour. And obviously, this is a very high level overview brush of a lot of topics. We have a lot more help as it relates to free webinars as well as workshops. So on our website, the next free webinars coming up, we have one September 12th, looking at productive meetings. Okay, so if meetings is really an area you want to dive deeper from today's conversation, September 12th is going to help you with that. Strategic pricing for profit. So we've got some cash ones, and then October 24th is going to be cash operations and conservation of cash, how to become more efficient and drive profitability. So there's some 2 cash ones coming up later in the year. And then we do scaling up workshops all over the country. So we've got one coming up in Denver, Fort Lauderdale, San Antonio. So again, our full list of events is over on our website event page. And if you have any more questions or you want to talk about some of the extra things that we do for free to help you learn more about our tools, reach out to me or reach out to info@assuredstrategy.com. We are always happy to help. So again, thank you for your time. I want to be conscientious of our end time, and I appreciate if I hear from any of you, reach out. Happy to talk. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.